Okay, one more thing here. I'm going to, well, sometimes I get this question about the flake scar patterns. Why did these different points have patterns like oblique patterns or horizontal flake patterns or flakes that are very close together or spaced far apart or large bold flakes? Do those matter? Can you use those to identify uh, point types and stuff like that? Are they separate technologies and that kind of thing? All right, so in my opinion, flake patterns are a result of skill, a high level of skill, and not necessarily the technology. All right, now that's very controversial. That opinion is controversial because I've seen some researchers classify artifacts based solely on blade flake pattern, and they don't even look at the shape of the base very much. The base could be various different shapes, and they say though that is within the range, the acceptable range. What we're looking at is the blade morphology or the flake patterns on the blades that determines the point type. Okay. Now I'm sure all of you have already researched what types of flake patterns there are. Uh, the parallel oblique is very showy. There's some artifacts with parallel oblique flaking, but there's many other types of flake patterns, which means you do it in sequence. There's an obvious sequence. There's an obvious intentional effort to create a pattern on the surface of the workpiece. Now, my opinion is, like I said, that is an indicator of skill and not the technology necessarily. So what I mean by that is, as you get more skillful at thinning or shaping your point, to be able to create regular flakes in a regular way on many different points in a series saves a lot of time. It becomes second nature and almost mindless once you get to that high level of skill where you're just producing lots of points that have the same flake pattern. It becomes easier and easier and easier, and they become more and more standardized looking. All right, but when you first start out, you're not going to be able to do that. So it could be that these two artifacts were made by father and son in the same tribe with the same tools and the same material, but one has a parallel flaking pattern and one doesn't. And they're classified as two different point types because one has crude flaking and the other has nice, even parallel flaking. All right. That is a mistake as far as I'm concerned. So, and do I think that's common or possible? I think that is very common, and I think it is possible. I also think that it's possible the other way as well. I could be wrong about that because, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, the ancient men could have been smarter than us and able to pick up how to flint knap much quicker than we are able to. And they can imitate complex, very difficult flake patterns very quickly, within months instead of years. Okay, so if there's a son learning from a father how to do these parallel flakings, it could take the son maybe a year or less to start duplicating these exact patterns that his father has been making for 20 years. All right, that is possible. Do I think it's likely? I don't know, but I wouldn't put any money on it. Let's put it that way. Okay, I put my money on the complex or very difficult flake patterns or showy flake patterns as a result of skill and not necessarily the technology. All right. Now, do I think there were certain flake patterns in certain time periods that are specific to time periods? Yes and no. Generally, no. I think the flint knappers have used parallel flaking or horizontal flaking or other types of maybe central ridge creation type flaking with a diamond cross section in different time periods. That's not specific to one. Now, I've heard people say that there's such things as Clovis flaking or Cody point flaking or archaic flaking. Those kinds of comments are correct only in very narrow contexts in certain areas of the country. Yes, you can tell a Clovis is from a certain area of the country by the flaking in some cases, but not as a general rule for all Clovis. You know what I mean? There's no way that one type of flaking applies to all Clovis. You can't say it's Clovis flaking because there's so many different types. That's what I mean by that. Okay, so in general, the flaking is a matter of skill, a pattern. A deliberate pattern is a matter of skill and not necessarily a matter of the technology. And it cannot be used to differentiate point types, because I think the same point type can have a range of different types of flakes. Within that culture, it could have crude or refined points of the same type, okay? And it could also extend as a overall technology to other tribes, and they may all have shared their knowledge, and some are experienced in it and some are not, but it's all the same point type. Some people have a different version of it than others, and it gets very complicated. I don't want to add to the complication by saying that the flaking itself is one of the criteria of typing. It isn't, as far as I'm concerned. Okay.